to the All Things Admin Tech Crash Course. My name is Julie Perrine. I'm the founder and CEO of All Things Admin, and I'm very pleased that you're joining us for today's presentation. The Admin Tech Crash Course is a technology-focused training program for busy professionals. Our goal with each session is to create a crash course on the relevant technology topics that you need to stay current on the technology and software that you use each day so you can be more productive and proficient in everything you do. Today's webinar is It's All About the Data. Discover Excel's time-saving data features, presented by our favorite technology instructor, Donna Gilliland. Donna's career in technology began back when DOS was the king of computer operating systems for the personal computer. Floppies were actually floppy, and the internet had just begun to explode. At that time in her career, there were no training companies. You either learned it on your own or went back to school to learn all about these new technologies. And Donna did both. Donna's career in the corporate world started as an executive assistant. She worked in a programming department supporting a staff of programmers and the VP of IT. But that was just the beginning. Over time, she realized she had an aptitude for learning software technologies and the ability to communicate to others in terms that all could understand. And her love of helping people, business, and technology made a great fit for her future career in training. Today, Donna is the award-winning technology instructor, certified technology trainer, and president of Most Training. Please join me in a warm virtual welcome for Donna Gilliland. Donna, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, as always. We're going to learn a lot today.
Awesome.
Okay, you should be seeing my screen now. And we have 4 areas that you're going to learn about today. And it, of course, as you saw in the objectives, it's all about the data. So you're going to learn about data validation. You will learn about consolidating spreadsheets, and you'll learn 2 different ways to consolidate spreadsheets, one of which will include using a formula to consolidate spreadsheets. You'll learn about filters, and then we'll wrap up with the subtotal feature, so let's get started. I have a spreadsheet ready to go, and we'll start with data validation first. And everything that we are covering today is on the data ribbon. So now data validation, first an explanation and then on to some examples. When you're keying anything into Excel, Excel lets you key in anything, numbers, text, percentages, dates, times, etc. However, if you want to restrict a cell or a range of cells to specific information, maybe you want to restrict it to numbers only, to dates, to even the text that's typed into that cell or range of cells, this is done with data validation. So we're going to get started with an example. In this spreadsheet, you can see that there is a column for the offices, and there's one for destination. And these destinations, as you can see, they repeat themselves. So as a user uses this spreadsheet, we could set it up where the destinations automatically appear in a drop-down list. And we could create that drop-down list so that it is validated to the point that nothing can be entered into the cell except for that which appears in the drop-down list. Now that would be called a list validation. And I'm going to go over here and start with a quick sample, and then we're going to come back and do something with the office and destination column. And I'll start with column J. So let's say that I wanted to have a column here for the reasons that people travel. This particular spreadsheet example is a spreadsheet that keeps track of the salespeople in a specific organization. They work in different offices and they sell flight packages. And so there's a column for the amount of the ticket they sold and how many tickets they sold, etc. And this column is going to be a list of reasons that people travel, but it's going to be in the form of a drop-down list. So whether you are validating one cell or multiple cells, the whole process begins by you selecting the cell or cells to be validated. I'm just going to do a few here for time's sake. So now I have cells selected, And then from the data ribbon, in the data tools. The data tools have several different tools, and the one we need is data validation. After choosing the option, when the menu appears, the options are data validation, circle and valid data, a few others that are not relative to our learning today. Data validation is your learning objective. Once you choose data validation, you have a dialog box, and there are 3 tabs, and we will cover all 3 in this training on data validation. There's a tab for settings. It's the default. If you look closely where it says allow, it is set to any value. It's just as I described earlier. We can, until you restrict it otherwise, we can key in any value. When you click the down arrow to the right of any value, this is where you obtain your choices for how or what you're going to validate. And there's an option to validate your selected cells for whole numbers only, for decimal values, for a list, for date, times, even a text link. And to give you an example of text link, let's say that within a text column, you wanted to restrict entries for the text, for the state column, to only 2 letters. Not less than 2 letters, not greater than 2 letters. Then I could choose text length. Another box would appear, and if I'll go ahead and choose text length, I'll let you see. It expands, and then it has a between value. And I would put a minimum of 2 and a maximum of 2 if that's what I was doing. That way, I can't enter less than 2 letters or greater than 2 letters. That's just to give you some food for thought. So let's go back to the example we're going to do. I'll change the allow from the text length to a list. A list is what you're going to use if your goal is to create a drop-down box of choices. Once you choose list, down below you're presented with a source box. And I'm going to teach you more than one way to create these lists. Now the long way is the way I'm about to do it, which is typing in each option that I want to appear in my drop-down list. And when you're doing it this way, you have to think about getting it in there alphabetically, because there's no sorting option in this source box. Or in our case, and that's exactly what I'm going to do, I'm going to put in 4 options. I'm going to put in that one of the reasons they travel is business. And then you separate with a comma, no spaces needed. And that one of the reasons they travel is for pleasure. And then a generic category of other. So for time's sake, I'm only putting 3. And this is what will appear in the drop-down list. And then when I click on OK, and you look back at my range that I have selected, any cell that I click within that range will provide a drop-down arrow. And looking to the right, it's very small, but there it is, down arrow, and there are the 3 choices: business, pleasure, other. I'll choose business, and then I come down to the next cell, also a validated cell, and I decide to key in something different, vacation, and then enter. You will be presented with an error message because vacation is not among those 3 choices, but you're going to learn how you can make it less restrictive if you need it to be less restrictive, and you'll see in a moment why you would want to do that. So it's a very generic message. So if you're building the spreadsheet for somebody else, the error message really doesn't give that person any insight at all. It says Microsoft Excel. The value entered is not valid. A user has restricted values. That tells me nothing. But we're going to create a customized error message in this routine that we're going through. So I'll cancel. And you see it doesn't let me put vacation in. So let's go back and make a change to the validated area. Keep in mind that you've got to select the entire area that you previously set up validation for, because you want all cells to get that change. And I'll go back to data validation and data validation, and that pops the box showing me what I currently have, which is business, pleasure, other. And I want to leave it that way, but I want to change the error alert. And remember, there are 3 tabs at the top, as brought out before. when you click Error Alert, this is where you get to put a custom error message. Right now it says that the style is stop. And let me explain what that means. It's the most restrictive that you have. That person cannot enter anything other than what's in the list. But if you change the style from stop and I made it a warning, then the user would be able to key in something else other than what's in the list. They would just get a pop-up warning letting them know whatever it is that you're going to put in this error box. And the error box title, to the right, it's blank. Earlier you saw that the error box title said Microsoft Excel. That doesn't tell the user anything. So in the title I'm going to put in Reasons for Travel as the title of the error box. And then the error message is what you want them to know. So I'm going to type in a small message that says you can choose from options in the drop-down list or continue with your current entry. And again, this is from the Error Alert tab. And I'll click on OK. Now I'm going to go back to a cell that's validated. Vacation, as before, and enter. And here comes the error box. Look at the title. It says Reasons for Travel. And the message, what I typed in the box. And if you'll notice, because this was changed to be a warning style versus the stop style, there are four buttons now. The yes, the no, the cancel, and help. And I do want to continue because I do want vacation in this cell, even though it's not part of the drop-down list. And if you're wondering if typing in an entry that's not in the drop-down list, does that make it part of the drop-down list automatically? And that would be no. You'd have to go back and place that in your list. You'd have to go back and modify your validation. So I'll go ahead and choose yes. And it lets me place in vacation, and then I'm dropped down to the next cell. Now let's go back and do a bit more with that. I'm going to reselect a range, data validation, data validation. So far you've covered 3 of these tabs. You covered settings, where you could choose among different types of validation criteria. The one we're working on is a list. Then the error alert, which we just did, but then there's an input message. An input message is a message that will stay visible in the cell as that user moves from cell to cell. Now I would suggest to you that I wouldn't want an input message on every single cell, at least in this example we're doing, but I'll show you what happens if I leave this range selected and I've chosen an input message. I'm going to put in a title. I'm going to put in choose from drop-down list. And just a little message to them. I could have picked something smaller to type, couldn't I? I even get chatty inside my message boxes. So you see, as I move from cell to cell, the input box, it's visible. See, it's visible every time that we move down. But at least now you know what an input message is. I typically reserve those for maybe a cell that I think it might not be obvious as to what should go in that cell for entry. But I do want to take that off, and since I had multiple cells selected, I need to select that range again, data validation, and of course I'm back at input message because that's what I was in last. And here are your choices. If you look at the bottom left of the dialog box, you see that it says clear all. but you need to understand that clear all means that anything I have in settings, anything in input or error alert, everything will be cleared from all of those. So if my goal in this case is only stop that input message, leave everything else as it is, then where it says, just beneath input message, show input message when cell is selected, if I deselect that option, number one, it does mean that the input message will not appear, but what I wrote is still here but dimmed out. If I don't think I'm ever going to use that message again, I don't want the ability to turn on and off, then I could just go in and delete all the information that's in that message and still deselect the box, show input message when cells selected, because I don't have anything to display. And now everything else will remain as it was, the settings with the list and the specialized error alert. And now I'll click on OK. All right, now let's take it up a level. What if you had a spreadsheet that has the U.S. states and you would like them to be in a drop-down list? Rather than type them, you could go and copy them from a source. You know, the web is full of free sources for us to get information in tables. And then we could copy that information, put it into another sheet, and name range it and make reference to that in the data validation. So don't worry if you're panicking right now with that description that I've just given you. Don't worry, you'll get to see how that's done live. So let me show you some other ways for you to make use of data that you've already got and then make a list out of it. I'm going to go here to the offices. I'm going to alphabetize this real quick, which is also on the data ribbon. And then I'm going to select all of these names. So consider this your bonus learning on this one. I'm going to get all these names selected. You're actually going to learn more than one thing in this process. And I'm going to get those names into another sheet. Just keep in mind if this were your states that you were trying to get a list of because you're designing a spreadsheet and you want to make use of those without typing them into the list, I would suggest that you get them, that you copy them into a different sheet. Now, here's an issue that I have already. I copied all those locations, but they're referenced more than once because there's more than one employee who works in these locations. And this bonus part right here, before we get back to the goal, which is data validated list through a formula, is how do I get rid of all those duplicates? And from the data ribbon, in the data tools is a button for remove duplicates. And then I'm presented with the option to look in this column for duplicates and to delete them. And I'm being prompted with a message that says that there were 181 duplicates, and now I'm left with 18 unique values. So that was a bonus learning piece for you there. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to take all this information and I'm going to name, range name it so that we can use the name of that range in your data validated list. And once you see it done, you'll see it's not a hard thing. And if range names are new for you right now, you'll learn that's another bonus for you. We have covered a little bit of that in prior Excel webinars. But to range name an area so that you can use it in a formula, you select your data. And I want these names selected. In fact, I actually want to select a larger area that doesn't have any names in it. And here's why you would want to do this in your planning. If I think that this list of locations is going to grow, we're going to add more locations, maybe we're going to add 20 over time, but I don't have those 20 yet, then I would suggest that you not only select what you need in the list right now, but I would select the larger area that I knew I'd be adding things to, because once this area is range named and then we use it in a formula, then as we add things to it, it's going to appear in the list because I selected the entire area. Here's the quick way for you to create a name for this range. When you look at your formula bar and you look over to the left, the far left is a small box that always tells you what your active cell is, and that small box is called a name box. And if you click in it, which I've done, it will highlight the reference to the active cell, and then you can type a name and then press enter. Keep this in mind since you're learning about range names. You can't have any spaces in the range name, and you cannot use a cell reference as a name. In other words, I couldn't call it D1. You can't, that is prohibited. And if you're going to use a name where you would like it to look like there are two names, you can use an underscore, but you can't use a space. So let's get this name created. And while the box is active, I'm going to call it locations. That's the name I want to call this range. And remember, I'm not even in the primary sheet. I'm in a different sheet in the workbook. But by naming this area with this name, Excel will always know which sheet and which area that we're talking about. So we selected, click the name box, typed a name, now press enter. So now I can make use of that range name. We're going to go back to our primary sheet, and we're going to create a validated list for the offices. I can select everything that's there, and then beyond, if I'm anticipating this spreadsheet to grow in records, then I could select much further than where data is currently listed. But the point is, you must have selected the entire range you want the list for. So now, back to data validation. And it's showing that this range allows any value. We're going to click the down arrow, and I still want a list. But on the source, here's where it gets special. Easy, but special. Before, I had to type my options. I certainly wouldn't want to type all the U.S. states either. That's why I want you to learn this way. Now all I have to do is make it a formula reference. And if you write formulas, you know that all formulas begin with an equal sign. So I'll type in an equal, and the name of the range that I created that holds those names that I want to populate my drop-down list. So I've typed in equal locations, and then click OK. Now any cell that I go to will have the drop-down arrow, and when clicked, look, there are all my locations. And remember earlier, I defined a range that also included cells beneath that have nothing in them. So if I do add 10 more locations to the company and I place them back in that sheet, if I were to add more locations, then I would of course need to re-alphabetize. And when I did, that would take care of it in the drop-down list. Isn't that great? So now you've learned multiple things relative to data validation. And now you know that data validation is a way for you to restrict what gets entered into a cell or a range of cells. So we're going to move from data validation into consolidating spreadsheets. And I'll go ahead and get to the spreadsheet I have planned for us to use. You're going to learn two different things about consolidating. You're going to learn how to consolidate by specific ranges in a spreadsheet, and then you'll learn how to create consolidated spreadsheets by using a formula. Lots of spreadsheets open here for us. Sort of saving that one for you. A bigger one in mind. Sorry for the delay. Okay, here we go. Yes, this is the one I'd like to use. Let's have you take a look at what's here so you'll better understand the data and then what we're doing with data consolidation. I have 4 sheets here, first, second, third, and fourth quarter. They're all laid out the same because it's operating off of a template design. But I want you to know that your data doesn't all have to be laid out the same in order for you to consolidate it. What is required is that every column have the same heading name or field name as it's called, because you can consolidate by category, as they call it, as long as all the headings are the same. Or you can consolidate by position, and you're about to see that demonstrated. So here are all the sheets. Now here's what's needed first. You need to have a sheet that will be the destination for your consolidated data. And I have added a 5th sheet called Summary. And when you begin the process, begin that process in the sheet that's the destination for the consolidated values. So that's where I'm at. And I'm in a cell where I want to begin. And I'm still on the data ribbon. And I'm still in Data Tools. So choose Consolidate. When Consolidate appears, the calculation that it uses by default is to add all the numbers up that are in the ranges that you will specify for consolidation. But when you look at the sum function, there is a down arrow, and you can pick from a number of functions that you want performed on the numerical data that's among those sheets you want to consolidate. We're going to leave ours at sum. The reference box is what you would activate when you're ready to start specifying which sheets and the ranges within those sheets that you want Excel to consolidate the values from. And we'll be doing that shortly. When you make those choices, you have an Add button for that. But let's look down at the bottom before we start the process. Down at the bottom, you have 2 label choices to use what's in the top row and left column. I'm going to close this so you can see what that means so you'll have a visual. Now here I'm going back to one of the first sheets. The top row has the labels, that has the headings, and the leftmost column are these employee names. And those are your only choices for bringing labels over, is to bring in the top row and the leftmost column of labels. Right, so let me get back to Summary, and we start. Consolidate. I'm in the reference box. One more thing that I haven't mentioned. Down in the bottom of this box, it says Create Links to Source Data. I want you to know that you can consolidate from sheets. How do I want to say this? You can consolidate from multiple workbooks. I am in a workbook with multiple sheets, but you can pull values from sheets in workbooks you are not in. And if you'll notice, to the far right of reference is a very button, a very small button that I can collapse this box. But to the right, that's the button I want you to focus on, the Browse button. So the Browse button would let you go out and pick a different spreadsheet, one that you want to add into it. If you have multiple workbooks that have spreadsheets, that's what the Browse button is for. Now, with that said, you know that this process you're about to go through is consolidating values from multiple locations. And you're in the sheet you want to do that in. So if you are consolidating from multiple workbooks, and then later you open the workbook that you combined all values from, you want to make sure that the main workbook with the consolidated values will update if any of the values have changed in the source workbooks that you consolidated from. And all that to say that's why you need the Create Links to your source data. if you're planning to make changes to that and you want it to all update. Okay, so now you've got the explanation of the Consolidate dialog box. That was a lot to take in, wasn't it? I am in the destination sheet and we're ready to roll. Now in the reference box, that's where I'm at, and I'm going to click the first quarter tab. And if you look back in my reference box, you can see it's already picked up the name of that sheet. Now before I forget it, I need to tell Excel I do want to use the top row labels, and I do want to use the left column. I should have done that a moment ago. Should have done that in the beginning. So I've chosen top row, left column. Now let me begin again. First quarter. And I'm going to select the area that has the numbers that I want to add in. And looking back in my reference box, you can see it says A5 through C60, preceded by the name of the sheet. That's the first one. Then click Add, and it drops it into the All References box. And it keeps you active in the sheet that you selected from. But then if you click second quarter, in my example here, I click second quarter, and you look closely at the spreadsheet data, you can see that Excel is assuming that I want to use the same range A5 through C60 because it's all laid out the same. But keep this in mind. If your data is not arranged in the same order, you can still manually select the area that you want to add together if it's not laid out the same. What's important is that your headings be the same name. So just want you to keep that in mind. All right, so that's easy. And then click Add again. And it drops into the reference box. We've got to do this 2 more times. Third quarter, it is choosing the correct area. Add in. Final one, fourth quarter, the area selected, add again. Now, the reference box holds 4 references to 4 different sheets that happen to use the same area. So I didn't have to do any manually selecting another area because they were all laid out the same. And you're going to finalize that by clicking OK. That's finalized. All the numbers come in on your spreadsheet. Now, I believe my titles at the top didn't come in a moment ago because I didn't start moments ago choosing the top header, so that's my error. So see, I have my my folks and my numbers are consolidated. Let me delete this one and run back through that one time for you. I'm just going to create another sheet. And I won't label it. I'll just go back to Data Consolidate. We'll do one final one. Then we're going to do one that we can use with a formula is what we'll do. So I'm choosing Consolidate. I want the top row and the left column. My reference. When you come out of the reference box and you choose top row, left column, just remember it deactivates the reference box and you'll need to go back and activate it. Okay, so now I'm going to click first quarter. Actually, really what I need to select are just the numbers. Just the numbers. And I'll just do 2 for time's sake in your revisit of this. Well, sorry. It's giving me ID numbers. Let's see what's going on. So hopefully, if you have spreadsheets that you need to consolidate, you'll find this helpful. My husband was in sales for many years, get back to another sheet for us. My husband was in sales for many years, and we used the consolidate feature to consolidate his quarterlies. I always felt that he should learn Excel, but he said that was why he had me. Let's try this again. See what's going on with my consolidate. And we'll add. And don't forget, again, if you have, when I'm selecting second quarter, don't forget if you do have multiple workbooks that you can browse and select those. And what will happen is if you are consolidating from multiple workbooks, when you open up your primary consolidated sheet, you'll be prompted to update your values. Now let's see if Excel is going to play nice with me on this one. Finally. It's because I didn't select all that I needed to select. So you have your names and you have your consolidated values. And the reason why I didn't grab my headings is I think I didn't highlight them in this quick demonstration. But the end result here is that you have their names because we chose left column. I did choose it in the selection. Now the headings aren't there because I didn't choose my headings. But if you look, the bookings are all consolidated together. So as I look at Roger bill codes, I can see that from the sheets I selected, he had a total of 3 bookings with total sales of 1,050 and how many tickets he sold. So now they're all consolidated together. But there's another way for you to consolidate, and that would be through a formula. So let's do one like that. The primary difference, or maybe big difference for you on the consolidating this way versus the data consolidate feature versus a formula, is you can get a little bit more detailed and specific with your formulas. Where here you're limited as to what data consolidate is going to allow you to bring over and do. And data consolidate does work with the numbers. I'll get to that sheet. Here we go, consolidating using formulas. Now in this one, I'll make the screen bigger for you. In this one, they're all laid out the same as before, these sales folks, and it's January, February, and March. But this time, though, we're going to do this with a formula. And I have created a sheet that has the names in them, but there are no sales because the goal here is to consolidate their sales figures from every single month into this one sheet, but doing it with a formula, where before we did data consolidate. So you'll start by being in the sheet where you want to create the formula that will pull from multiple sheets. And I'm positioning in E2, and also make certain that your names, in this case the names of the employees, are laid out the same. So it starts with equal, and we are doing a simple routine of sum. Now once you get the formula started in the sheet where you're going to add everything up, once the formula is started, then you can click your way through the final formula. I'm going to the January sheet and click, and if you look up in my formula bar, you can see that the formula begins equal sum, open paren, Jan, that's the name of the sheet, exclamation point is being placed in the formula because that is the separator symbol from the sheet to the cells within the sheet. So then I want to select the sales numbers, which are in E2 through E6. Now they are in E2 through E6 of the February and March. But if you don't want to have to go to each one of those sheets selecting that range, then you can sequentially select your sheet tabs, meaning right now I have Jan selected, a specific area selected, but if I hold down the Shift key, think sequential when you think about the Shift key, and I click the March tab, the MAR tab, and you look back at my formula in the formula bar, it says Jan :Mar, and colon is always for consecutive order, and it says E2 :E6, which means that it will pull E2 through E6 from 3 sheets. I just need to cap the close paren because all formulas where you're using functions always have to have a matching close paren. And then when I press enter, I am taken back to where I began. And because of relative referencing, when we copy this down, it will pick up a new row for each place I copied down to, and I'll have a total. So the quick way is for me to go to the lower right corner to the autofill square. It's the black square in the lower right corner that's active in every cell, and double click. And now I have totals from 3 sheets for these people. And so I consolidated with a formula. Consolidated with a formula. So now you've learned 2 ways to consolidate. By the way, when you, just for clarification purposes, when you go back and watch this video, keep in mind that on the data consolidate, on your first example that you saw that I was doing, the reason why that you did not see the headings at the top and the headings at the left, even though I had chosen those 2 options, is because in the demonstration and rapid movement, I didn't grab the headings that were in the row or the headings in the column when I selected the area. That's why it came over odd that first couple of times. So just want to make sure that's clear for you so there won't be confusion when you go back to study it and you go back to work it out on your own. So that takes care of 2 of your objectives, data validation, and you learned a few bonuses with that one, and consolidating spreadsheets using the consolidation feature and using a formula to consolidate. Next up is using filters, followed afterwards with the subtotal feature. Now if you use spreadsheets and use filters, this would be maybe just a nice refresher for you, but if you've never used filters, you're going to appreciate this feature. Let me get to another spreadsheet for us. And we'll come back to this one. The purpose of filtering is to give you that flexibility to be able to extract what you need to see and have suppressed what isn't applicable for viewing right now, what you don't need to see. Your spreadsheet information does have to be laid out in a specific way in order to use filters. Your data cannot have blank rows and blank columns. Otherwise, and let me restate that, you can't have extra rows. That's a blank row. So as far as Excel is concerned, what's beneath that blank row constitutes another data set. And I can't have a blank column in between because once again, Excel would see that as another data set. So, and every column has to have a unique heading, ours does. Go ahead and get rid of this, we don't need it. Now, you would, number 1, click in your spreadsheet data, and you can turn the filter on in one of 2 places. We're on the data ribbon today, and that's where we'll use it from. In the sort and filter group, you have a button filter. Then when you look back at my spreadsheet, every single column has a down arrow. And any one of these columns can then be filtered. I want to filter, for example, by destinations that are equal to Chicago. By clicking the arrow, and you're going to learn more to filtering than what you're learning right now, but let's start with the basics. Clicking the down arrow for destination or any of the fields, you have the option to sort alphabetically, A to Z, Z to A, or a numeric, whichever the need is. you have the option to come down beneath and deselect everything in the list and just pick what you want. Or you can choose where it says text filters, where you can get very detailed and go with an equals, doesn't equal, begins with, contains, for more specialized filtering. But in my case, I want to deselect everything because I'm only interested in seeing offices that are in Cancun and Detroit and Houston. And now those are the only things that I'm seeing. Actually, those are the destinations. Those are the only ones I'm seeing. And when you look at the arrow, what was an arrow, it now has a filter button letting you know that it has been, the data that you're looking at is being filtered by that field. And as I approach that button, it does tell me that it has been filtered for these three, Cancun, Detroit, and Houston. And then you can filter within a filter. Within these destinations that they sold flights to, I want to know how many of these carried a commission. So I can come over to the commission column filter, down arrow, and I'll deselect all. I'm only interested in seeing records where there was associated commission. Click yes. Now the records have been narrowed once more, and now I have a filter within a filter. So I'm seeing that these are the destinations. If I want to sort that, A to Z, and there they are, and these are the records where there was an associated commission. To clear the filter, there are two choices for you. If you want to clear the filter for just a specific field, click the filter for that field, and then you can choose where it says clear filter from. In my case, it's destination, and it would clear it for that field. Another way of clearing filters is from the sort and filter group where you have a button that says clear. And that's going to apply across the board. So if you had utilized filtering within filters, using the clear from the sort and filter is clearing all your filters. Let's do one more, which is a custom filter, and we're going to do this for the office. The down arrow and coming to text filters, we'll start with custom filter. Custom filter is always set to equals, and I'm in the office field, and I'm going to choose equals to Brooklyn Center, and then you have two operators that you have to make a choice about, and versus or. When you use an and operator, what you're saying is that both conditions that you specify have to hold true within that cell for it to return a result. Whereby or is one or the other can hold true and I'll get results. So I want one or the other. And I'm looking also for offices that are equal to Duluth. Also keep in mind, you might not be able to see it well on the screen, but it does tell you that you can use a question mark to represent any single character and use an asterisk to represent any series of characters. So for example, if I were looking for all occurrences of locations that start with the word north, so I want to find northeast, northwest, then it would be north, and I could put an asterisk at the end of that, and it would find anything that begins with north that maybe had west or east. So these are wildcard characters that you can use. All right, I'll click on OK, and it comes back, and I only have those options. I only have those offices, rather. I looked for Duluth and Brooklyn Center. Here are the offices. That's all I have, Brooklyn and Duluth. And I'm interested in clearing the filter, and I'll go ahead and just use the button this time instead of the sort and filter, and I'm going to choose the option within that says clear filter from office. By the way, when you filter records out, what's left on the screen is what would print if you print it, which can come in very handy. Okay, so that's the filter, the basics of it. When you don't want the filter arrows anymore, be sure to click the filter button in the sort and filter group, and they'll be gone. And now here's your final learning objective out of your 4. Your final one is to subtotal. A few things about subtotal before we begin. Whatever you want to, whatever the grouping order is that you want to subtotal by, that information needs to be sorted. Our goal is I want to subtotal by my offices. So the office would need to be sorted if it wasn't already. So that's one requirement. Then once that's done, you can begin the subtotaling by these offices. That's on the data ribbon. It's in the outline group, and there's the button for subtotal. The box that appears will always choose the very first field on the left, always. And you'll just have to tell it which field you are grouping by. Well, I want to group my information, my subtotals, according to the office. And by clicking the down arrow, I can get a list of all my fields. So at each change in, cooperate, back to subtotal, and while I'm bringing this sheet back up, your at each change in office is what we're going to choose, and we will let it default to a summation. Right, bear with me. I'm going to close the file and bring it back up. Those are not the same we like to hear. All right. We'll try this again. I think you're going to like the subtotal feature. It's a huge time saver. Huge, huge, huge. Well, hold on. We'll get there. Thank goodness for Task Manager. Okay, now let's try. Okay, here we go. Let me go back and get those offices alphabetized, so don't forget that's one of the requirements. Okay, so now let's see. Get this bigger for you. Back to the data ribbon. Back to subtotal. And that is the screen I need to see. Again, at each change in, our goal is at each change in office. Use function, mine is currently set to count from a prior routine that I did, but yours will be by default set to performing a sum, but just know that you can change the functions from something other than sum. See, the goal here is that I want to get a summation, a total for the amount and the tickets. And I want that subtotal on amount and tickets field to be by office. That's why we're grouping by office. Then when you come to the third box of subtotal, it lists for you all the fields that are in that spreadsheet. And it will always check mark the last field that's in your spreadsheet. I don't want to do anything with commission. It's not even a numeric field. It's just that it'll always be selected by default. First column, last column are always selected. All right, so it says add subtotal to. I want there to be a subtotal on my amounts and a subtotal on my tickets. Then beneath it says replace current subtotals, and it's checkmarked. What you're being told is that if your data has any subtotals already, they will be replaced by what you're asking it to do right now, which is subtotaling by 2 specific fields. Then there's an option not selected that says page break between groups. That would mean that if, say, Julie handles the Cancun sales area, then I could choose to have it break by groups, and then all the Cancuns would print together, and I would give that to that salesperson. Whoever handles New York, you get the idea. I'm not going to choose page break between groups, just making you aware of what it is. Then the last one, check mark, says that it will show the summary below the data. And all that's saying is that below the tickets field and below the amount field, within each office, I'll get a summary of my information. And then after clicking OK, let's take a look. There's more than meets the eye than what you're seeing, and I'll bring that to your attention shortly. But let's just take a look at what we have so far. We asked for it to group by offices, and it has. And then there is there's a title that says Blaine Total, and I do have a total on the amount and a total on the tickets for that office, as I do for Bloomington and for all of the others. They're grouped and totaled by 2 fields. But in the process of subtotaling, you've gotten much more flexibility than you might realize. What happens is the spreadsheet will be outlined so that you can collapse the detail of different groupings if you want to just focus on certain sets of data. If you look to the left of my spreadsheet, you can see, for example, Blaine has a vertical bar on the left with a minus, known as a collapse expand tool. When I click the minus, it collapses all the detail for Blaine, and I just see the Blaine reference and the total for the amount, the total for the tickets. But I don't necessarily want to go to each one, collapsing each one. In the subtotal routine, in this outlining, you are provided with outline level numbers that let you work on the data as one big set. And as you look at column letter A, just to give you a reference, visual reference, look at column letter A, and when you look to the left, there are 3 squares, a 1, a 2, and a 3. And these are level numbers that control all the data so that you can collapse down to specific levels. If I click the 1, it collapses down to a grand total of all the offices. Here's the grand total of the amount, grand total of the tickets. If I click level number 2, I get one reference of each office, and then I see their grand total on the amounts and the tickets. And clicking level 3 would bring everything back. And when you don't want it in an outline anymore, go back to the same button you started with, Subtotal, but in the lower left corner, choose the button Remove All, and you're back to how it was before you ever began. And you have just finished officially your 4 primary objectives: data validation, consolidating, filtering, subtotal.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Donna. I have to share a quick little story. First of all, I didn't even know you could consolidate spreadsheets like you showed us today, so that was a totally new tip for me. And I used to, with filters, I thought when you applied the filter, I never was for sure what happened to the rest of my data, so I was always scared to use them because I wasn't sure if my data was staying intact behind the scenes or what was happening to it. So over the course of today's webinar and some of the past ones we've done, I've come to see the huge, incredible value of filters and how they can save time and effort when you're trying to manipulate and review data. So thanks for sharing all of those awesome little tips with us.
My pleasure.
And we had a comment. This is more of a comment than a question that came in, but it's something I think I'd like to see if you have a quick second to show it to us. It comes from Sherry, and she says, something I taught myself the hard way is if the numbers are blue, that also means the data is filtered. I was working on a spreadsheet that was so large I could not see the top where the filter arrows were and thought I lost a bunch of my data until I Googled what it meant to have blue numbers in Excel. Is that something that you can show what that means?
Sure. I think I know what she means. When we have data in a filtered state, I'm just turning the filter back on, and I'm just going to filter by destination, just a couple of little things so that you can see. Filter by Boston and Cancun, right? And see my blue numbers on the left? The blue, it's just that it's a signal to you that you have suppressed data.
Perfect.
And that's why those are there. But now, if the other part of the question is, you know, she's losing sight of her headings, I don't know, was that maybe the other need? Because you can freeze that row.
Okay.
Okay, was that the other part of the question? I'm not sure if it was, but it was. Okay. Now, if I want to keep those headings in view, regardless of whether I am filtering or not filtering, I can go to, now in my case, this first row, the headings, they're all in row 1, but if those headings weren't in row 1, you'd have to take a little bit different approach. You would need to click in the row just beneath the row you want to lock. Regardless of the situation described, you have to go to the View ribbon. And in the View ribbon, in the Window group, which has a lot of tools, one of them is to freeze panes. When you click the down arrow, you have the choice to freeze panes or freeze top row. Now, in this spreadsheet, my top row, row 1, they are headers. So it's fine for me to click freeze top row. But if that row of headings were in row 5, you would need to click in row 6 and then choose freeze panes, and that will always freeze the row above the one you're in. But we've got it easy today. First row are the headings, so I can just choose freeze top row. And then as I scroll, I don't lose sight of my headings.
Perfect. When the tip came in about the blue numbers, I had never realized or paid attention to that either, so that's another great tip. Thanks for sharing that and for also demonstrating that.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Are there any other questions? You're welcome to type them into the Q&A box, or if for some reason you think of something after you get started testing out some of the features you learned today, you can always submit your questions to us through our website at allthingsadmin.com, and we will get you a response or get you connected with Donna if it's something that ties in specifically to the topic that's covered in today's webinar content.
Absolutely.
So with that, I don't see, let's see here. Is Donna available outside of these webinars for questions? Well, you can connect with Donna on social media. That's a great way to connect with most training, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and Donna has awesome videos on YouTube on her web channel. So one of the things I'm going to do here real quick, Donna, is take back control so I can show.
And they're welcome to email me as well if there's something specific she wants to know, and, or he, and I can help. I'll do my best.
Exactly. So yes, if Donna is certainly available, and Donna also does training for corporate entities. So if you're interested in bringing Donna in as a corporate trainer, she loves doing those types of engagements as well. But yes, she is available to answer questions outside of these webinars, and you can connect with her on any of the website or social media links that you can see on the screen right now. Or you can connect through the emails that we send, and we can get them forwarded along to her. So with that, as with any crash course, our goal today was to arm you with the tools and strategies you need to take them back to your computer and implement what you learned. So if you have questions as you get started in that process, as we mentioned earlier, you can connect with Donna through the links provided here or through our website at allthingsadmin.com. And we hope that what you've learned today will help you be even more productive and efficient in using Excel specifically in your daily work. So with that, I want to thank everyone for investing your time and energy in joining us for today's webinar. That concludes this presentation. Thanks again for being here, and we look forward to seeing you in a future Admin Tech Crash Course very soon. Have a fantastic day, everyone.